Hello fellow colleagues, my name is Tiana and I am undertaking a Masters in Secondary Education at CQU, and I am currently studying Assessment in Secondary Schools informed by Educational Neuroscience. As a pre-service teacher, I believe it is important to educate parents and teachers on the effects chronic stress can have on students. Understanding the neuroscience behind stress will allow parents and teachers to work together to create a safe and comfortable learning environment. The National Institute of Mental Health defines stress as simply the brain's response to any demand. Given that definition, stress is not inherently bad, but simply a response. How harmful it is ultimately depends on the intensity, duration, and treatment. When students experience a small amount of stress, particularly emotional, the encoding phase of memory can help to retain new information. For example, if you were to witness an accident, the well-known fight or flight response is triggered and the memory of the event is encoded. This stress response allows information to be retained in sharper detail. This is the same within the classroom. When students make an emotional connection to the information being taught, they are more likely to retain it. Too much stress, however, can inhibit memory encoding and even block memory recollection. Using the previous example, if the witness of the crime was brought in front of a jury, they may struggle to retrieve the memory under the heavy pressure. Stressful events are very common in educational settings as students are subjected to a multitude of exams, evaluations, and deadlines. The pressure to perform can have critical impacts on their learning and the memory process. So, what exactly happens to the brain during a stressful situation? The body's stress response, driven by the HPA, activates the healthy production of adrenaline and cortisol, triggering the body's fight or flight response. However, chronic stress can create an overproduction of these hormones. Because development is impressionable, a consistent and overwhelming presence of these hormones can fundamentally change the way a student's brain and body develop. The neural architecture most vulnerable to the impact of the stress hormone cortisol is the limbic system. This comprises the amygdala, the hippocampus, and the prefrontal cortex. This is also the most critical for learning. Under conditions of chronic stress, this system has difficulty working to facilitate the learning process as they are primed to be on high alert for danger and to react quickly. Chronic stress causes the amygdala to become hyperactive. This constant state of high alert results in students being extremely sensitive to potential triggers. Opposing this, connections within the prefrontal cortex deteriorate under chronic stress, making it difficult for this region to carry out its typical cognitive control function and downregulate arousal from the amygdala. Elevated levels of cortisol have been shown to inhibit the neurogenesis in the hippocampus, diminishing its functional capacity and impairing its ability to create, store, and retrieve memories. The impact of stress on the brain implicates the same skills that serve as foundational building blocks to healthy development and learning, as shown on the building blocks for learning framework. Changes to the amygdala, prefrontal cortex, and hippocampus influence a child's ability to manage stress and develop strong self-regulation skills. So, now that we understand how stress impedes the learning process and memory retrieval, let's look at what we can do to help mitigate the effects of stress. Neuroscience research shows that areas of the brain affected by the adverse experiences of trauma remain plastic well into adulthood. Neuroplasticity allows the brain to reconstruct and rewire itself based on behavioral, environmental, and neural changes. To combat the effects of the fight or flight response, it is important to tend and befriend instead. Buffering relationships between parents and children or teachers and students produce another type of hormone known as oxytocin. This hormone is the counterbalance of cortisol. When teachers and parents are attuned to the individual needs of the student, they are supporting the development of independence and autonomy over healthy learning. In partnership with this, creating an environment that feels physically and emotionally safe reduces the risk of activating a hyper-alert stress response system. Coping techniques to deal with stress can be achieved through establishing control over the situation. Teaching mindfulness and metacognition to students is useful in developing the ability to self-calm and use strategies to sustain a state of relaxed alertness. When students have experiences that build their executive functions of emotional self-regulation, attention focus, and distraction inhibition, they have the tools to resist the brain's involuntary switch to the reactive emotional control systems. Mindfulness exercises require only a few moments of quiet, and most can be done anywhere. These exercises include mindful breathing, body scanning, mindful eating, loving-kindness meditation, and mindful movement. The benefits of this include improved mood, brain function and coping skills, and reduced stress and its consequences. On a deeper learning level, authentic performance tasks and project-based learning should be prioritized as this will improve student understanding on both factual and conceptual levels. Teaching should not be based on a goal of test preparation, but instead be based on experiences that are deeper and personally meaningful to students. This promotes intrinsic motivation, improving long-term memory and making information more easily retrievable. Information can also be retained more easily if students were encouraged to create a mental suitcase. This strategy involves students writing down the most important information on a sheet of paper as a review before a test. Retrieval efficiency is increased as students are not holding this information in their working memory throughout the test. When educating students on recognizing stress within themselves, it is important to teach them to visualize a successful performance. No matter the task, visualizing success activates critical motor brain networks and increases confidence as the memory circuits preheat for easy access to information. When it comes to learning, stress has the ability to hijack the brain. It is the responsibility of teachers, parents, and guardians to be aware of the neurological effects this can have on a student in both their academic and personal lives. By understanding how stress affects learning, teachers can help build emotional resilience to combat stressful environments.